6 months ago, I was just a grieving widow. My only daughter, Claire, promised to take care of me. Instead, she deceived me, took away all my rights, sold my house behind my back, and dumped me in a cheap nursing home to be forgotten. She thought I was helpless. She considered me finished. But while rummaging through old boxes in that cramped room, I found a locked metal box that my husband had hidden for decades. The secret inside not only saved my life, but it also gave me the power to destroy my daughter's life.
My name is Eleanor Rose. I am 72 years old. If you passed me on the street, you would just see an ordinary old woman, a widow, a grandmother, someone who is supposed to be invisible. But appearances can be deceiving. Beneath these wrinkles and this gray hair lies a story of betrayal that nearly broke me, and a secret that finally set me free. I wasn't always this strong. In fact, just 6 months ago, I was sitting in my kitchen, feeling like my life was over. The tea had gone cold 3 hours ago. I knew this because I had been staring at it since the sun first touched the horizon. I watched the steam rise, swirl, and then disappear. I watched the surface of the dark Earl Grey develop that thin, oily shimmer that happens when tea sits too long in a porcelain cup.
It wasn't just any cup. It was Thomas's favorite. It was cream-colored, old, and stained on the inside from years of breakfasts. There was a hairline crack running down from the rim, a jagged little scar in the ceramic. I remember 20 years ago standing in this very kitchen, holding this cup. I had tried to throw it away. I told him, "Thomas, it's broken, it's dangerous." And he had laughed. That deep, warm laugh that used to vibrate through the floorboards. He took it from my hands gently and said, "Ellie, it still holds tea, doesn't it? If it still holds tea, then it's still doing its job. Imperfections don't mean something is useless." I ran my thumb along that crack now. The ceramic was smooth and cool to the touch. Everything felt cool these days. My hands, the tea, the empty space on the left side of the bed where Thomas used to sleep. Even the air in the house felt different, like it was holding its breath. The morning light was coming through the kitchen window at that particular angle it only achieved in late September. It cut across the worn oak table in strips of gold and shadow. I watched the dust motes dancing in those beams of light, floating, drifting. I found myself counting them. 37, 38, 39. I counted because counting was easier than thinking. Counting was easier than feeling. Outside, the ocean was doing what it always did, rolling in, rolling out, breathing. Thomas used to say the ocean was the earth's way of meditating. Every morning for 40 years, we would walk that beach. He would hold my hand, his palm always rough from working in the garage, but so warm, and he would whisper, "Listen to it, Ellie. It's teaching us how to let go. Every wave comes in, every wave goes out. Nothing holds on forever." He was trying to teach me, even then, but I was failing the lesson because I was holding on. I was holding on to this cold cup of tea. I was holding on to this cracked porcelain. I was holding on to this house with its creaky floorboards and the smell of salt in the curtains. And mostly, I was holding on to the ghost of a man who had been gone for exactly 183 days. I had started counting those days too. I pulled his old cardigan tighter around my shoulders. It was heavy, made of gray wool. I had washed it 4 times since the funeral, trying to be practical, trying to be clean. But every time I pressed the rough wool against my face, I convinced myself I could still smell him. Old Spice aftershave, sawdust, the lavender sachets I tucked into his drawer, and something else underneath it all, that specific warmth that couldn't be bottled or named. It was just him. I buried my face in the collar and breathed deep, closing my eyes. For a second, just 1 second, I let myself pretend he was walking through the door. I let myself pretend the kettle was whistling for him. But the door didn't open. The kettle stayed silent. The grief hit me then. It didn't crash over me like a storm today. No, today it was quiet. It was a rising tide, slow and cold, filling the room up from the floorboards, soaking into my socks, rising up to my chest until it was hard to breathe. Some days, the grief was a scream. Other days, like today, it was just a heavy silence. The house was so quiet. Not the peaceful quiet we used to have, not the comfortable silence of two people reading books in the same room, knowing they are loved. This was the hollow quiet of absence. It was a cruel quiet. It made every small sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the settling of the wood, the distant cry of a seagull, feel like an accusation. "You are alone," the quiet whispered. "You are going to be alone forever." I set the teacup down on the table. My hand was shaking. A small drop of cold tea spilled onto the wood. I looked around my kitchen, the same white subway tiles we had argued over in 1985, the same butcher block countertop Thomas had sanded and sealed himself. I could still see him standing there, covered in dust, smiling at me with a sandwich in one hand and a tool in the other. This window over the sink. I had stood here 10,000 times, washing dishes, watching storms roll in off the Atlantic, watching my daughter Claire play in the surf when she was small. I stood up. My legs felt stiff. Arthritis, the doctor said. Grief, my heart said. I walked to the window and pressed my forehead against the glass. The beach was empty. The sand was silver gold. It was beautiful. It was the view that had made us buy this property 43 years ago, back when we were young and broke and foolishly optimistic. "It's a fixer-upper," the real estate agent had warned us. "The roof leaks. The foundation is settling." But Thomas hadn't looked at the roof. He had looked at the horizon. He had turned to me, his eyes crinkling at the corners, the look that made me fall in love with him at 19. And he said, "Ellie, imagine waking up to this every single day for the rest of our lives." And we had. We truly had, until 6 months ago. I heard a car door slam outside. The sound startled me. It broke the spell of the morning. I lifted my head, disoriented. I wasn't expecting anyone. I didn't have visitors anymore. In the first few weeks after the funeral, the neighbors came. They brought casseroles wrapped in foil and sympathy that tasted like obligation. But that had stopped months ago. I moved to the living room window, staying behind the lace curtain, and looked out. A silver SUV was parked in the driveway. It gleamed aggressively in the soft morning sun. It was Claire, my daughter, my only child. She was walking toward the porch. She was carrying a leather messenger bag, the expensive one her husband Daniel had bought her for Christmas. She was dressed for the city, not the beach. Cream-colored slacks that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. A navy blazer. Heels that clicked sharply on the wooden steps. Click, click, click. She looked stressed. Her shoulders were hunched forward. Her jaw was tight. My stomach dropped. I knew that look. I had seen that look 6 months ago at the hospital when the doctor came out of the emergency room and shook his head. I had seen that look when she helped me plan the funeral, choosing the flowers with efficient, cold speed. I had seen that look when she sat me down 2 weeks after Thomas was buried and told me I needed to start thinking about the future. I didn't want to open the door. I wanted to lock it. I wanted to turn off the lights and hide in the bedroom with Thomas's cardigan. But she was my daughter.
the baby I had held in the nursery upstairs, the little girl who had learned to walk on this very porch. She knocked. 3 sharp raps, impatient. I took a deep breath. I smoothed down my hair. I unlocked the door. "Mom?"
Claire's smile was immediate. It turned on like a light switch, bright, teeth showing. But it didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes were calculating. "I was hoping you'd be up," she said. "It's 8 in the morning, Claire," I said softly. "Where else would I be?" She laughed, a small, dry sound. "Right, sorry. Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked past me, and the air shifted. She brought the smell of the city with her. Expensive perfume, car exhaust, stale coffee. It clashed with the smell of my home. It felt foreign. She walked straight to the kitchen table and set her heavy bag down, right next to my cold tea. She looked at the cup, and her nose wrinkled slightly. Just for a second. "Have you eaten?" she asked. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked, Mom." I didn't answer. I just stood by the counter, crossing my arms, holding myself together. Claire sighed. She pulled out a chair, Thomas's chair, and sat down. "Can you sit, please?" she said. "We need to talk." "I'm comfortable standing." "Mom." Her voice dropped to that tone, that specific tone she used lately, the one you use with a stubborn toddler or a very old dog. "Please, just sit down." I sat, but not in the chair opposite her. I took the chair to her left. I couldn't bear to sit across from Thomas's empty spot and see her filling it. Claire opened her bag. She pulled out a thick manila folder. She placed it on the table with a soft thud. "I know this is hard," she began. She clasped her hands on top of the folder. Her nails were perfectly manicured, a pale nude color. "I know you don't want to think about administrative things right now, but we really need to finalize Dad's estate." My chest tightened. "I thought we did that. I signed the papers for the bank last month." "Most of it is done," Claire said smoothly, "but there are loose ends. Insurance claims, some outstanding medical bills from the hospital, some tax forms." She opened the folder. It was full of papers. Papers with tiny print. Papers with yellow sticky notes saying, "Sign here." She pulled a pen from her purse, a gold fountain pen. "I've already filled everything out for you to make it easier. You just need to sign where I've marked." She slid the first paper across the table. I looked at it. The letters swam before my eyes. Life insurance disbursement. Beneficiary confirmation. "This is for the life insurance?" I asked. "Yes, and the next one is for the property tax adjustment. Routine things." I picked up the pen. My hand felt heavy, like lead. I looked up at my daughter. She was watching me, intently. There was a tightness around her mouth. She wasn't looking at my face. She was looking at the pen in my hand. "Claire," I said slowly, "what is this really about?" She blinked. "I told you, it's paperwork. We have to close out the accounts." "Don't," I whispered. "Don't talk to me like I'm senile. I'm grieving, Claire. I'm not stupid." She leaned back. The mask slipped a little. She looked tired. "Fine," she said. "You want the truth? Mom, look at you. Look at this house." She gestured around the kitchen. "You're barely eating. The garden is overgrown." "I saw the gutters when I drove up. They're overflowing. You're sitting here in the dark with cold tea." "I'm managing," I said. "You're not," she snapped. Then she lowered her voice. "You're drowning, Mom. Daniel and I, we're worried sick. We think you need help. We think you need to simplify your life. You shouldn't have to worry about property taxes and maintenance and insurance." "This is my home, Claire." "It's a burden," she said. "It's a massive burden for one person. I'm trying to take that weight off your shoulders. I'm trying to help you." She reached out and touched my arm. Her hand was cold. "Please," she said softly, "let me handle the details. Let me take care of the hard stuff. You just focus on getting better, on healing." I looked at her hand on my arm. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. I was so tired. I was so tired of making decisions. I was so tired of waking up every morning and remembering how to be a widow. It sounded so nice to let someone else handle it, to let go. "Can I read them?" I asked. "The papers?" Claire stiffened. "It's just legal jargon, Mom. It would take hours, and I have to get back to the city for a meeting at noon. I should read what I'm signing." "Do you not trust me?" The question hung in the air, heavy, sharp. "It's not about trust," I said. "It feels like it is," she said, pulling her hand away. She looked hurt. She did it so well. "I've taken days off work to come here. I've spent hours on the phone with the insurance companies. I'm doing all of this for you, Mom, to protect you." She pushed the papers closer to me. "Just sign them," she whispered. "Please, let me help you." I looked down at the stack. The top paper was the insurance claim. I signed it. The next one was the tax form. I signed it. And then, buried in the middle, there was another document. The font was smaller. The header was dense. I squinted at it. General Durable Power of Attorney. Grants Claire Margaret Bennett full authority. Financial decisions, real estate transactions. My heart skipped a beat. "What is this one?" I asked. My voice sounded thin. Claire didn't blink. She didn't hesitate. "That," she said casually, "that's just a precaution. It's standard, in case you get sick, or if, God forbid, you fall and end up in the hospital again. It just allows me to pay your bills if you can't get to the bank. It's for emergencies." "Power of attorney?" I said. "That seems serious." "It's just a safety net, Mom. Daniel has one for his parents. Everyone does it." She smiled again, that reassuring, confident smile. "I promise," she said. "I'll only use it if you need me to, if you're in trouble." I looked at the paper. I looked at the line waiting for my name. I thought about Thomas. What would he say? Thomas had always trusted Claire. He had a soft spot for her. Even when she was a teenager and wrecked a car, even when she was in college and spent her tuition money on a trip to Europe, Thomas always forgave her. "She's got a good heart, Ellie," he would tell me. "She's just finding her way." "She has a good heart," I told myself.
She's my daughter. She was looking at me with those big eyes, Thomas's eyes. I was so tired of fighting. I was so tired of being suspicious. I just wanted the tension to end. I just wanted to go back to my window and watch the ocean. So I picked up the pen. I didn't listen to the small, quiet voice in my stomach that said, "Stop." I ignored the shaking of my hand. I lowered the pen to the paper. The ink flowed smoothly. Eleanor Rose. I signed my name. Claire let out a long breath. It sounded like relief. "Thank you, Mom," she said. She gathered the papers quickly. She slid them back into the folder and snapped it shut. "You did the right thing. You won't have to worry about a thing now." She stood up. She kissed me on the forehead. Her lips were dry. "I'll call you tonight," she said. And then she was gone. I sat there in the kitchen, listening to her car drive away. The silence rushed back in to fill the space she left behind. I looked at my hand, the hand that had just signed the papers. I felt cold, colder than before. I didn't know it then, but I had just signed away my life. I had just handed the match to the arsonist. 3 weeks passed. I marked them off on the kitchen calendar. 1 day, 2 days, 20 days. It was a strange time. The air in the house felt heavy, like the pressure drop before a hurricane. Claire called every evening at 7 p.m., sharp. "How are you, Mom?" "I'm fine, Claire." "Did you eat?" "Yes." "Good." She never mentioned the papers. She never mentioned the power of attorney. She talked about the weather. She talked about the kids' soccer games. She talked about everything except the one thing that mattered. It felt like we were waiting, but I didn't know what we were waiting for. I tried to keep busy. I started cleaning the attic. I went through boxes of old photos.
Pictures of Thomas building the deck. Pictures of me holding Claire on the beach, her little legs covered in sand. Every object was a memory, and every memory was a double-edged sword. It brought him back to me, but it also reminded me that he was gone. On the 21st day, it was a Tuesday, a beautiful, clear Tuesday. The ocean was bright blue. I was in the garden, trying to prune the hydrangeas. They had overgrown the path, just like Claire said. I was struggling with the shears. My hands weren't as strong as they used to be when I heard it. There was a white van parked there, and a sedan. 3 men were standing on my lawn. 2 of them were wearing polo shirts with a logo I couldn't read from a distance. The 3rd man was older, wearing a suit that looked uncomfortable in the heat. He was holding a clipboard. He was pointing at my roof. I stopped. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. I called out. The men turned. The older man in the suit smiled. It was a practiced smile. White teeth. No warmth. "Mrs.?" he asked. He started walking toward me, stepping right over my flower bed. "Good morning. I'm Robert Chen with Coastal Realty." He extended his hand. I didn't take it. I left my gardening glove on. "For the inspection?" I asked. He paused. He looked down at his clipboard, then back at me. He looked confused. "For the inspection," he said. "The structural inspection?" I stared at him. The words didn't make sense. They were English words, but they didn't form a sentence I could understand. Robert Chen's smile faltered. He exchanged a look with the 2 men by the van. "The sale," he said slowly. "The sale of the property." He looked at his papers again. "We're scheduled to close on the 15th, he said. The world tilted. Literally tilted. The sky seemed to slide sideways. I felt the blood drain from my face, rushing down to my feet. I grabbed the porch railing to keep from falling. "No," I whispered. "There is no sale." "Ma'am," he said gently, taking a step back. "I have the listing. It's been under contract for 2 weeks. The seller is—" He ran his finger down the page. The shears fell from my hand. They hit the driveway with a loud metallic clang. "Claire? The papers?" I couldn't breathe. My lungs felt like they were filled with wet sand. "I need to make a call," I said. My voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "Of course," the man said. He looked pitying now. I hated that look. I walked into the house, my sanctuary, my life. I walked into the kitchen and picked up the phone. My fingers were shaking so badly I misdialed twice. I dialed Claire's number. It rang once, twice. Her voice was cheerful, breezy. "I was just about to call you." I stood there, gripping the phone. I looked out the window at the strangers standing on my lawn, assessing my home, calculating its value. I wanted to scream. I wanted to howl like a wounded animal, but I couldn't. The shock was too deep. It pinned me down. "Claire," I said. My voice was barely a whisper. It cracked. "Oh, good. That's the inspection team." She said it so casually, as if she had sent a gardener. "You sold it," I whispered. Tears started to spill down my cheeks, hot, fast. "Mom, listen to me," she said. Her voice shifted. It became firm, businesslike. "We talked about this. You can't handle the upkeep. It's dangerous for you to be there alone." "You tricked me," I sobbed. "This is an emergency, Mom. You're deteriorating. You're depressed." "It's done, Mom," she said coldly. "The contract is signed. The buyers have put down a deposit. If we back out now, we lose thousands of dollars." "I don't care," I cried. "Cancel it." "Claire, please. This is my home. This is where your father—" The words hung in the air, cruel, sharp, final. "Dad is dead," she repeated, softer this time, but just as hard. "And he wouldn't want you rotting away in that big, empty house. I found you a place. It's a lovely community. Sunset Gardens. You have a room reserved. Friday, 3 days away. I won't go, I whispered. You have to, she said, because the house isn't yours anymore. It belongs to a nice couple from the city. She paused. I'm doing this because I love you, Mom. She hung up. The dial tone hummed in my ear, a long, flat, empty sound. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the floor. I sank down onto the kitchen linoleum, the same floor I had scrubbed on my hands and knees, the same floor where Thomas and I had danced to the radio on our anniversary. I pulled my knees to my chest. I wrapped my arms around myself, and I broke. I didn't scream. I just rocked back and forth, silently, while the tears soaked into my shirt. Outside, I could hear the men talking. I could hear them measuring my windows. I could hear them planning how to tear apart my life. I was 72 years old. I had been a wife, a mother, a teacher. I had been strong. But sitting there on the kitchen floor, I felt like a child, small, helpless, and utterly, completely alone. The boxes arrived on a Thursday. They weren't just ordinary cardboard boxes. They were moving day kits that Claire had ordered online. They were uniform, brown, impersonal, and flat. She brought them into the house in stacks, dropping them onto the living room floor with a heavy thud that vibrated through the floorboards and up into the soles of my shoes. She didn't come alone. She brought a label maker and a roll of thick plastic tape that smelled like chemicals. Okay, Mom, she said, clapping her hands together. She sounded like a coach rallying a losing team. We have 3 days. The movers are coming Monday morning. Ruthless. It was a word she used often these days, as if kindness was a weakness, as if memory was just clutter to be swept away. I stood by the fireplace, wrapping my arms around myself. I watched her tape up the bottom of the first box. Screech, snap, smooth. The sound was loud in the quiet house. It sounded like a bandage being ripped off a wound. I can pack my own things, Claire, I said softly. Mom, honestly, we don't have time, she said, not looking up. If I leave you to do it, you'll spend 20 minutes staring at every old photograph. We have to be efficient. She pulled a black permanent marker from her purse. She uncapped it with a sharp click. She walked over to a pile of large black garbage bags she had thrown on the sofa. On the first bag, she wrote in big block letters, trash. For the junk, Mom, old magazines, broken knickknacks. She walked over to the mantelpiece. Sitting there, right next to the clock, was Thomas's collection of sea glass. He had spent 40 years collecting those pieces. Every morning on our walks, he would scan the sand. He would stoop down, pick up a tiny shard of frosted glass, and hold it up to the sun. Look at this blue, Ellie, he'd say. That's rare. He kept them in mason jars, 4 large jars filled with blues and greens and soft cloudy whites. They caught the afternoon light and turned it into water. Claire picked up the first jar. Like this, she said. It's just broken glass, Mom. I stepped forward. That's not junk. And Dad is gone, she said. Her voice dropped to that soft, patronizing tone. The one that said, I know better. You can keep 1 jar. A small one. She didn't wait for my answer. She tipped the jar over the black plastic bag. The sound went through me like a physical blow. It sounded like bones breaking. I watched the blue and green shards slide into the darkness of the trash bag. 40 years of mornings, 40 years of Thomas smiling at the sun. Gone. In a second. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her arm. I wanted to throw her out of my house and lock the door. But I stood frozen.
The image of that paper, the power of attorney, flashed in my mind.
I had signed it. I had given her the right to do this. I had handed her the match. And now I had to stand there and watch her burn my world down. Claire sighed. She picked up a single piece of blue glass from the bag and handed it to me. "Here," she said, "put it in your pocket, a keepsake. Now let's keep moving." The next 2 days were a blur of agony, a slow-motion car crash. I had to choose between Thomas's workbench in the garage or my sewing table. "The room at Sunset Gardens is small, Mom," Claire reminded me every hour. "There's no space for a workbench." So on Saturday morning, a stranger came with a pickup truck. He was a friend of Daniel's. He bought Thomas's tools, his chisels, his hammers, the hand plane he had used to smooth the wood of this very porch, for $50. $50. I watched the man load them into his truck. I felt like I was selling pieces of Thomas's hands. My favorite armchair, the wingback where I had nursed Claire as a baby? Too bulky, Claire decided. The facility provides a recliner. My collection of hardcover books, the ones I had read on rainy afternoons for decades, they have a library there, Mom. Dust collectors. By Sunday night, the house wasn't a home anymore. It was an echo chamber. The walls were bare. The rectangles of pale paint where pictures used to hang looked like ghosts. The rugs were rolled up. The furniture I was allowed to keep, a small dresser, a lamp, 1 box of clothes, was stacked in the center of the living room, looking small and frightened. I slept on a mattress on the floor that night. I didn't sleep, actually. I lay awake in the dark, listening to the ocean one last time. I tried to memorize the sound. I tried to record it in my heart. But all I could hear was the sound of that sea glass hitting the bottom of the trash bag. Sunset Gardens sounded like a resort. It wasn't. It was a beige building on the edge of town, 3 miles from the coast. You couldn't see the ocean from here. You couldn't even smell it. When Claire pulled the car up to the front entrance, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It hit me the moment the automatic doors slid open. It wasn't a dirty smell. It was worse. It was the smell of aggressive cleanliness, bleach, lemon floor polish, and underneath it all, the faint, inescapable scent of boiled cabbage and old dust. It smelled like a place where people came to wait. Claire walked ahead of me, her heels clicking briskly on the linoleum. She waved at the receptionist. "Here," she announced brightly, "Eleanor Rose." I dragged my feet. I was carrying Thomas's cardigan folded over my arm like a shield. I was clutching my purse so tightly my knuckles were white. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway was long and narrow, lined with identical doors. There were handrails along the walls. A few people were sitting in wheelchairs by the nurses' station, their heads bowed, asleep or lost in thought. A young woman in blue scrubs looked up as we approached. She had a kind face, but she looked tired. "You must be the new intake," she chirped. She looked at me, then at Claire. "Jessica," the nurse said. She came around the desk. She leaned in close to my face, speaking slowly and loudly, articulating every syllable. I flinched. I looked at her. "I'm 72, Jessica," I said quietly. "I'm not deaf, and I'm not 2 years old." Jessica blinked. Her smile faltered for a second, then bounced back. Indestructible. She led us to room 304. Room 304 was a box. There is no other way to describe it. It was a square, sterile box with beige walls and gray carpet. There was one window. It looked out onto the parking lot. I could see Claire's car. I could see a dumpster. There was a hospital-style bed with rails on the sides, a generic wooden dresser that wasn't mine, and the recliner Claire had promised. It was brown vinyl, ugly, shiny. It looked cold.
"Claire," said, spinning around in the tiny space. She sounded desperate. "Look, Mom. It's efficient. Everything is within reach." I walked to the window. I put my hand on the glass. "It will never feel like home," I said. The room went silent. Claire's smile finally dropped. She let out a huff of air. She turned to me, her face flushed with frustration. "Mom, stop it," she hissed. "I have done everything to make this smooth for you. I sold the house, I handled the movers, I filled out the paperwork, I got you into the best facility in the county. Do you know how much this costs?" She gestured around the room. "Can you just try? Can you just be grateful for once?" I turned to look at her. "For you," I repeated. "Yes. This was all for you, wasn't it?" Claire's eyes narrowed. She grabbed her purse. "I'm leaving," she said. "I have to get back to work. I'll come back when you're less emotional." She walked out. I listened to her footsteps. Click, click, click. Down the hall.
Into the elevator. Gone. I was alone. I sat down on the edge of the unfamiliar bed. The mattress crinkled. There was plastic underneath the sheets to protect it. I looked at the beige walls. I looked at the brown chair. I was no longer Eleanor Rose, the woman who planted hydrangeas and made the best blueberry pie in the county. I was room 304. Intake, a file in a cabinet, a problem to be managed. I pulled Thomas's cardigan around my shoulders, but for the first time, it didn't make me feel warm. The first 3 days were a blur of gray. I refused to unpack. Unpacking meant staying. Unpacking meant accepting. So I lived out of the boxes stacked in the corner. I wore the same clothes. I sat in the vinyl chair and watched the cars come and go in the parking lot. The staff, Jessica and the others, kept coming in to check on me. They were relentlessly cheerful. They treated me like a pet that needed to be walked and fed. They didn't see me. They saw an old woman in a chair.
On the 4th afternoon, it rained. The rain beat against the parking lot asphalt. It reminded me of the beach house. It reminded me of the window over the sink. I felt a pang of longing so sharp it almost doubled me over. I needed something familiar. I needed an anchor. I remembered Thomas's clock. Not the grandfather clock. That was sold. The small brass desk clock. The one I had fought to keep. I knelt down on the beige carpet. My knees popped. I pulled open the box labeled Bedroom, Keep. It was a mess inside. Claire had thrown things in haphazardly. Socks mixed with picture frames, a hairbrush tangled in a wool scarf. I dug through the layers, pushing aside sweaters and books. And then my hand hit something hard. It wasn't the clock. It was metal, heavy, cold, dented on one corner. I froze. I knew this box. It was a gray metal lockbox, old and scratched. Thomas kept it in the back of his closet, on the top shelf, behind his winter boots. I hadn't seen it in years. I thought it just held old coins or maybe his father's war medals. Claire must have blindly swept the contents of the top shelf into this box without checking what was inside. She was tall. She wouldn't have even looked.
I pulled it out. It sat heavy in my lap. It was locked. I felt a flutter of curiosity, just a small spark, but it was the first thing I had felt in days besides misery.
I felt around the bottom of the cardboard box. Loose change, a few buttons, and then a small strip of blue painter's tape with a brass key stuck to it. I smiled, a real smile. Thomas always taped the spare key to the bottom of the box. "So I don't lose my mind looking for it," he used to joke. My hands were shaking as I peeled the tape off. I looked at the door of my room. It was closed. The hallway was quiet. I inserted the key into the lock. Click. The sound was loud in the small room. I lifted the lid. Inside, there were no coins. There were no medals. There was a stack of papers. A passport, Thomas's old one, expired 10 years ago, and a thick white envelope. On the front of the envelope, in shaky handwriting, the handwriting from when the sickness had first started to take his motor skills, was one word: Ellie. My breath hitched. I picked up the envelope. It wasn't sealed. I pulled out a single sheet of yellow-lined notebook paper and a small blue booklet, a bank passbook.
I unfolded the letter first. If you are reading this, I'm gone. And I know you. You're worrying. You're worrying about the house. You're worrying about money. You're thinking you have to be small to survive. I never told you this, but back in '98, when I sold my share of the hardware business to my brother, I didn't put all the money into the roof repairs. I told you I did, but I didn't. I invested half of it. I wanted to surprise you for our 50th anniversary. I wanted to take you on that world cruise, the one with the balcony suites. I know my mind is going. I can feel the fog coming in, Ellie. It scares me. So I went to the credit union last week, while I still could. I moved the account. It is in your name only, not the estate, just you. It's a trust, Ellie. Claire doesn't know. Nobody knows. Use it. Buy yourself some joy. Don't let anyone, not even our daughter, tell you what to do with your life. I dropped the letter. It fluttered to the carpet. I picked up the blue bank book.
It was for the First National Credit Union in the next town over. I opened it to the last entry. It was dated 2 years ago. I stared at the number. I blinked. I wiped my glasses. I looked again. $842,000. The room suddenly felt very hot. The sound of the rain faded. The smell of boiled cabbage vanished. Claire had sold my house for nearly $2 million, yes, but she controlled that money. She was the power of attorney. She decided how much allowance I got. She controlled the estate. But this? In your name only, Thomas had written, not the estate. If this money was in a separate trust, and if it predated the power of attorney, and if Claire didn't know it existed, a slow, cold feeling spread through my chest. It wasn't grief. It wasn't fear. It was power. For the first time in 6 months, my back straightened. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 2 p.m., Tuesday. Claire was at yoga. She wouldn't be checking her phone. I stood up. My knees didn't hurt. I walked to the closet and pulled out my good wool coat. I put the metal box into my large tote bag. I put Thomas's letter in my pocket, right against my heart. I walked to the door of room 304. I opened it. I walked past the nurse's station. "Jessica," called out, not looking up from her computer screen. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady, stronger than it had been in years. I walked out the automatic doors. I walked past the bench where the old people sat and waited for death. I walked straight to the street. I raised my hand. A yellow taxi pulled over. "Where to?" the driver asked. I looked back at the beige building, the prison that held my furniture, but not my life. I clutched the bag tighter. "First National Credit Union," I said. "And then I need to find a lawyer." He pulled away from the curb, and for the first time in 6 months, I didn't look back. The taxi driver didn't just drop me off at the bank. He waited.
When I came out of the credit union 20 minutes later, clutching a certified check and a new folder of documents, he looked at me in the rearview mirror. "A lawyer," I said. He took me to a building downtown, glass and steel. It looked like a fortress. The office of Harrison Sterling was on the 40th floor. It smelled of espresso and old leather. Mr. Sterling himself was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite. He didn't smile when I walked in. He just pointed to a chair. I sat down. I put my tote bag on the floor. I pulled out Thomas's metal box, the letter, and the bank book. I told him everything. I told him about the house, about the cold tea, about the moving day boxes, about the power of attorney I had signed because I was too tired to fight, about the sea glass in the trash bag. I spoke for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. My voice was steady, like the ocean on a calm day. Mr. Sterling listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look at his watch. He just leaned back in his leather chair, steepled his fingers, and watched me. When I finished, silence filled the room. Then, for the first time, Harrison Sterling smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was a shark's smile. Sharp, dangerous. "Mrs. Rose," he said quietly, "your husband was a very wise man." He pulled a yellow legal pad toward him. "Here is what we are going to do," he said. "First, we are revoking that power of attorney, immediately. I will file the motion with the court within the hour." I asked, "No, you are sitting here, you are lucid, you are articulate, you are clearly of sound mind." He wrote something down. "Second," he continued, "we are going to move your husband's trust, this secret account, into a new secure holding that she cannot touch." He looked at me over his glasses. I looked out the window at the gray city sky. I thought about Claire. I thought about her clicking heels. I thought about the way she said, "It's just broken glass, Mom." "Cut her out," I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but they also tasted like freedom. I said, "She has it. She sold my home. She can keep the proceeds from that sale. That is her inheritance. But she will not get another penny from me. Not now." Mr. Sterling nodded. "Disinheritance. It's a bold move." I thought about the beige room, the boiled cabbage, the way she looked at me like I was a piece of furniture. "I have never been more sure of anything," I said. Mr. Sterling worked for 2 hours. I signed papers. This time, I read every single word. When we were done, he handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope. "Will you take them?" he asked. I took the envelope. It felt heavy. "No," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "Yes, I have to wait for her. She comes every Friday to check on me." I stood up. I put on my coat. "I want to give them to her myself," I said. I went back to Sunset Gardens that evening. I played my part perfectly. When Jessica at the front desk asked where I had been, I told her I had gotten confused on my walk and taken a taxi back. She scolded me like a naughty child. "Oh, Eleanor, you scared us." "Please don't," I said, making my voice sound small and frail. "I'm fine." She bought it. Of course she did. To her, I was just room 304. Old ladies got confused. It was what we did. I went to my room. I hid the metal box and the cream-colored envelope under my mattress. And then I waited.
I waited for 3 days. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I didn't unpack. I sat in the ugly brown chair and watched the cars. But I wasn't miserable anymore. I was preparing. I rehearsed what I would say. I rehearsed how I would look. I practiced the silence I would use. Friday afternoon arrived. At 2 p.m., I heard the familiar sound. Click, click, click. Heels on linoleum. Fast. Confident. The door to room 304 swung open. Claire breezed in. She looked radiant.
She was wearing a new coat, cashmere by the look of it. She had a new haircut, sharp and expensive. She looked like a woman who had just come into a lot of money. Because she had, she chirped. She didn't look at me. She walked straight to the bedside table and dropped a plastic bag from the drugstore. I brought you a treat, peanut butter cups. She sat on the edge of the bed, my bed, and pulled out her iPad. So, she said, scrolling through her emails, I have news. The sale on the house officially closed yesterday. She didn't mention the amount. She didn't mention my share. She didn't look at me. That's nice, I said. And, she continued, Daniel and I were thinking, since you're so settled here and it's quite expensive, we might move you to a semi-private room next month. Room 312 is opening up. You'd have a roommate. It would be nice for you to have company, right? I looked at her. She wanted to move me from a box to half a box.
She had millions of dollars of my money, and she wanted to squeeze me into a shared room to save pennies. Pennies she was likely already spending on herself. The last thread of guilt I had, the tiny thread connecting me to her as a mother, snapped. Claire, I said. She was still typing. She laughed, a dismissive little puff of air. Mom, you don't have any papers to sign. I handle the papers. No, I said. You need to sign this. I reached into my tote bag. I pulled out the cream-colored envelope. I slid it across the small table. It stopped right next to her iPad. Claire sighed. She put down her tablet. She looked annoyed. What is this? She picked up the envelope. She opened it. I watched her face. I watched her eyes scan the first page. I watched the color drain from her cheeks. It happened fast, like a curtain falling. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. What? She whispered. She looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, confused. Mom, what is this? Revocation of power of attorney. Keep reading, I said. She pulled out the second paper, the certified letter from Harrison Sterling, the one detailing the creation of the Eleanor Rose Irrevocable Trust, and the third paper, the bank statement. 0, 0. Her voice shook. It was a high, thin sound. Your father, I said. He hid it. From everyone. She stood up. The papers trembled in her hands. You can't just hide money. That belongs to the family. No, I said calmly. It belongs to me. It is in my name. And as of yesterday, it is in a trust that you cannot touch. Not now, she yelled. The mask fell off. The caring daughter vanished. The stressed mother vanished. Standing there was just a greedy stranger. I have expenses, Mom. The new house, we're doing renovations, the kids' tuition, and you're in a home. You don't need almost $1 million. You're old. I stood up. I picked up my coat from the bed. I put it on, buttoning it slowly. 1 button, 2 buttons, 3 buttons. I am old, I agreed. She moved to block the door. Panic was setting in. You can't leave, she said. The doctors say you're frail. You're confused.
Not anymore, I said. Read the date on the letter, Claire. It was filed yesterday. I'll fight this, she hissed. I'll go to court. You can try, I said, but Mr. Sterling is waiting for your call. He has a video deposition from my doctor recorded this morning, certifying that I am perfectly sane. I paused. I wanted to savor this. He told me to tell you that if you try to stop me, or if you try to touch a single penny of my money, he will sue you for elder abuse. Claire froze. The word jail hung in the air. She looked at the papers in her hand. She looked at me. She looked small. You sold the house, Claire, I said. You got what you wanted. You have the money from the sale. Keep it. That is your inheritance. Mom, please, she whispered. Tears started to spill from her eyes. Real tears? Fake tears.
It didn't matter anymore. Mom, don't do this. We're family. I looked at her. I looked at the face that used to be so dear to me. I know, I said. I picked up my bag. I walked past her. She didn't move. She just stood there in the beige room, holding the papers, realizing she had gambled everything and lost. I walked out the door. I walked down the hall. I didn't look back. I didn't stay in town. I took Thomas's advice. I bought myself some joy. It has been 6 months since I walked out of Sunset Gardens. I am recording this from the balcony of a ship. We are currently docked off the coast of Santorini. The water here is a different color than back home, a deep, impossible blue. It looks like ink. I didn't keep all the money. I donated a large portion to a legal defense fund for the elderly. I wanted to help other people who were trapped in beige rooms, waiting for someone to save them. But I kept enough to travel.
Enough to see the places Thomas and I used to dream about. Rome, Athens, Paris. I still drink Earl Grey tea every morning, but now it doesn't go cold. I drink it while it's hot, watching the sunrise over new horizons. I still miss him, every single day. I still talk to him when I see something beautiful. Look at that light, Tom, I say. You would have loved this. But I am not drowning anymore. Claire calls sometimes. I don't answer. Mr. Sterling sends me emails. He tells me she tried to contest the will. She failed. He tells me she tried to get access to the trust. She failed. She is living in the house she bought with my money, but I hear it's not a happy home. Greed is a hungry ghost. It is never satisfied. I look out at the water. The waves roll in, the waves roll out. Thomas was right. Nothing holds on forever. Not grief, not pain, and certainly not me. I have learned that kindness is a beautiful thing, but kindness without boundaries is just self-destruction.
I spent my life setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. And when I burned out, they complained about the ash. Never again. I take a sip of my tea. It is warm. It is sweet. My name is Eleanor Rose. I am 72 years old. And for the first time in my life, I am free. If my story touched your heart today, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps us share more real stories like mine with the world. And please,